Hello, hello, hello. Get my screen sharing going here, and then we'll get on with the show. It'll work that way. I should, yeah. Just got to go back to the beginning here and push the button. So I'm using Google Slides for those you want to be behind the scene information. And Google Slides has a one press thing for presenter mode, which is really handy. Let's see. That's probably the right one. Let's see what comes up. That looks like my presentation. Look at that. Amazing. Okay, here we go. So, welcome everybody to all the folks who are watching live, as well as all the folks who are watching this recorded. Because I guess the organizers of the event didn't like me very much because he put me up against really, really good speakers. So that's the challenge, you know. But no, so everyone who is not watching this right now can watch it recorded, which of course they won't know until they watch it recorded. Anyway, let's get started. So it is not a given that 2020 was a bad year for everyone. It was a year of great turmoil and change for almost everyone, but whether that was good or bad depends on a number of factors. So my greatest asset is my network, but I live in a relatively sedate corner of Connecticut, an hour away from the nearest city of more than 100,000 people, as my live audience knows. In 2020, everyone moved online and geography ceased to exist as a meaningful concept. I joked that I uploaded my brain to the internet and slipped loose my mortal coil. No, wait, that's something different. But, left my corporeal bonds and could connect anywhere. My connections proliferated around the globe. I was able to meet a fantastic range of people from New England to Washington to England to Kenya to Saudi Arabia. I was able to do this by taking the networking techniques and strategies that I already had and thinking about how to adapt them to this new world. Because we live in a time when everything has been thrown up into the air. If you came into 2020 on top of the world, on top of your game, firing on all cylinders, then it may have been a very tough year for you trying to stay on top. But if you came into 2020 in rough shape, working your way up, trying to find your opportunity, 2020 may have been a really good year and a great opportunity. Because, no one ever asks to start the game over when they're winning. It's only when things aren't going well, we're like, this game is dumb, let's start it over. So for anyone who's having those challenges, 2020 is a great opportunity. So let me ask a quick poll to our live audience here. How did you come into 2020? Were you on top of the world, everything was great? Were you on the bottom and say, thank heavens everything changed? Were you kind of in the middle and things just continued along? Put in the chat top, bottom, or middle for where you came into the year. So this talk, we're going to discuss how you can take advantage of this new globalization connection to build an unstoppable network and change your life. So if that idea excites you, put yes in the chat. All right, I see half the audience is excited at least. So the great thing is in the recording, nobody can see how many people are in the room. So there's it's a huge audience for all you watching the recording. This audience is enormous. It's amazing. All right, who's me? Who is Michael Whitehouse? Let's start with who I am and why I'm here. I'm here because I run Conference 21 and I put myself on the schedule. But I have other qualifications as well. So I'm a coach, business, mindset, personal kind of stuff. I'm author of The Guy Who Knows a Guy. I'm a speaker. I'm a podcaster. I do a motivational podcast. I also run a little event you may have heard of called Conference 21. Hopefully you've heard of it because you're here. And while we're on Conference 21, quick poll, one more. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is awful, 10 is amazing and life-changing. How would you say the conference is going so far? Awesome. Very good. So quick story of my life in 60 seconds or so. So I launched my first business right out of college. It was a game store. It was awesome. It was fantastic. It was amazing. And it made no money. But other than that, it was really successful. In my life, I've sold all manner of things: insurance, cars, printing, a few other things. Knives, I sold those once. I worked in numerous fields, including teaching driving people with special needs. I've done marketing, all kinds more. In 2014, my wife and I both had dramatic and precipitous career changes that required us to move in a hurry. We arrived in Groton, Connecticut, knowing nobody. For those of you who know Groton, you may be surprised to know that when I first moved here, I did not realize there was a submarine base in the town. I found that out about a week or so later. I was like, what's all this submarine stuff? Oh, America's Submarine School's here. Who knew? That's how quickly I moved to Groton. So starting the night before we moved, I attended a Chamber of Commerce event, Eastern Connecticut Chamber. I later joined BNI, and I built my network from knowing literally nobody to where I am now. So I've found 3 jobs through networking back when I was working, jobs for other people. By 2017, I was well enough known that I was recruited to fill a vacancy in an elected position in the Groton Representative Town Meeting. And by 2020, if you're in Southeast Connecticut, I probably know, I knew someone, by 2020, if you're in Southeast Connecticut and you needed to connect with someone, I either knew the person you needed or I knew someone who knew them. Today in 2021, same thing, but not limited to Southeast Connecticut. Pretty much anywhere I can find someone. I actually had someone recently reach out to me from Indianapolis, a city to which I have never been, or I knew exactly one person, looking for a particular introduction, and I was able to make it, leveraging the connections that I have. So we're going to discuss 2 different areas of networking. First, we're going to talk about the way I learned them back when we could leave our house and, go to networking events on boats, as in that picture. And then we'll talk about applying those concepts into the virtual world. So there's a number of benefits that we can all get from networking. And those are supposed to slide in separately. But pretend they're sliding in separately, and I designed a really nice PowerPoint. So the most obvious benefit most people come to first is finding clients. It can also help you find business associates, people to work with, people to partner with for joint ventures. You can learn and share knowledge. I know at least a little bit about a remarkable array of topics because my networking allows me to connect with a spectacularly diverse group of people. If your network is wide enough, you never need to buy from a stranger. When we bought our house in November, it was amazing. There's only 2 strangers involved in the process. The guy who rented us the moving van and the septic guy who was actually known to the seller. So not necessarily a stranger, but everyone else, the realtor, the mortgage guy, the insurance guy, the home inspector, even the seller, were all known to us. So our stress level is much lower. In fact, I really can't imagine what it would be like to go through what we went through with a bunch of strangers around me who I wasn't sure if I could trust them. So that's one of the best things about networking. You don't have to work with strangers. Friendships make great networking, and networking can make for great friendships. And of course, networking can help you get a job or promotion. More than half of all new job placements have some element of networking to them. And finally, my favorite is the ability to help others. Many problems can be solved by simply introducing someone to the person with the solution. And when I do that, I feel like a superhero. Networking man. So before we go on, I want to check in with you, the live audience. Put in the chat what you came here hoping to learn, because I can absolutely fill an hour with what's in my head, but I'd rather fill it with what you want to learn. So if there's something specific you would like to learn, put it in the chat. Otherwise, I'll just talk about what I want to talk about. So what would you, live folks, like to learn from me? Type that while I drink this water. I'd like to hear your best profound moments of learning. Talk about your topic. Well, I'm going to talk about the topic, so we're right on with that. And how to handle difficult people. Let me write that one down. We'll get to that. When you say how to handle difficult people, in what sort of context? And so while you answer that, I will continue along. So one of the first things to know in networking is basic things about yourself. Who are you? Hopefully you know who you are, but more, How do you describe yourself? Why are you at the networking event? Who are you looking to meet? What connections are you looking to make? Being able to explain yourself, your business, what people need to know in 30 seconds. It's especially important to be able to quickly explain yourself in few words, because you may want to set the stage without actually going into the whole presentation. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, about the power of making them do all the talking for building good relationships. So know what you have to offer. But one of the biggest things there is know who you're looking to meet, because good networkers will often ask you, who are you looking to meet? How can I help you? Who is your ideal referral? And if you don't have an answer to that, they usually won't hold it against you. But when I meet someone, I say, hey, who are you looking to meet here? This is my chance to be the superhero, networking man. And I don't have the chance to be a superhero if you can't tell me who you want to connect with. So if you know who you want to meet, then it's if you're looking to connect with business owners who are early stage in their business, and we meet at a networking event and you tell me that, then I go through my Rolodex in my head. I think everyone in this room is old enough to know what a Rolodex is. I go through my Rolodex in my head. I look around the room and I think, that one. All right, come with me. Let me introduce you to some people. And now I feel really cool. So, and now I like you more because you gave me the chance to feel really cool. People remember how you made them feel. So, but more importantly, you came there for a purpose. If you know that purpose, people want to help you to solve that. One of the challenges a lot of people have in networking is they're kind of intimidated by meeting different people, and sometimes they're intimidated by meeting people of a higher stature, CEOs, business owners, mayors, big deals, and other times they're intimidated by meeting anyone. Why does anyone want to talk to me? I'm just me. Why do you want to talk to me? So it can be valuable to go through a little exercise of what makes you awesome. What do you have to offer? Why would somebody want to talk to you? And not comparatively, because on the right axis, you can make anyone superior to you. If you shift the axis and perspective, you can turn that around. And Nancy actually asked something which is relevant to where we are about to be. She asked, at networking event, how to start the conversation and get a referral, i.e. how to be a speaker for their organization or anyone they know without seeming pushy. Okay. So I'm not sure that's a question or if you're saying that's what you're looking for. But if that's what you're looking for, that's a good thing to have in mind. If it's a question, I'll address it. I'll do both. So the important thing is to have this attitude of what is the value that you carry and that you can offer. And it can be different things. So if you're meeting the CEO of the big company, you don't have power and prestige nearly comparable to them, but you do have connections. So, for example, if I'm meeting with big shot CEO and we're chatting and we're having small talk, which I'll get to in a minute, and he happens to mention that he's got this pain in his neck, and every time he does this, it kind of twinges him, I can be like, I'm not a big shot CEO. I don't have 1/100th the money that he does. I don't have 1/100th the connections he does, but I do know Dr. Hutter. Hi, Dr. Hutter. I do know Dr. Hutter, and I can make that referral and say, I know a guy who can probably help you with that, because all of his money hasn't been able to solve it. He didn't know the right guy who could solve the problem for him. That's what I have that I'm able to offer to anyone is connections, because everyone needs something. But the really important thing is to be able to fortify your ego, to know what your unique personal advantage is, what it is you have to offer that makes you special, no matter what else. And it's not necessarily something you're going to bring up and say, look at how great this thing is. It's just something you have in your mind that lets you say, I am the best, or I am really good at this thing. It could be singing. It could be knitting. It could be Fortnite. Fortnite's a video game, for those of you who don't know. It could be live action role playing. That's something I kind of go back to sometimes. I am pretty good with a foam sword. So, you may be millionaire CEO, man, but I can kick your butt with a phone sword in my hand. Now, this is not something you're going to talk about. I'm not going to bring this up at a networking conversation, but I might keep in the back of my mind is like, this is what makes me pretty cool. And because, of course, you don't want to bring it up because, one, they may say, what the heck is LARPing? Or two, worse yet, they may say, you got some swords? Because I'll show you I'm actually better. So you want to be humble. You don't just want to brag about it. But it gives you something to hold on to, whatever it is, to think of yourself as a person of equal stature to anyone that you might meet. A great example of this is, so Gary Vaynerchuk, some of you may have heard of. He's a very well-known personality on the social media circuit. He's really big on YouTube and has really great advice. Very well-known, famous, a lot of money. Missy says she loves Gary. He speaks at her speed. So Gary met a guy named D-Rock. D-Rock cold called Gary. I think D-Rock's name is actually Derek. D-Rock cold called Gary and offered to work for him for free. Offered to follow him around with a camera and do the editing of these videos. And now D-Rock is almost as well known as Gary is himself, because what D-Rock had to offer this luminary was his time. Gary didn't have time to edit videos, and he wasn't even sure if he wanted to have someone follow him around. It certainly didn't want to invest in it, but D-Rock's able to offer the time and that resource so that there was a good value of exchange. D-Rock had something Gary didn't. Gary had something D-Rock didn't. They connected. Both were much better off. So when you think about what you have to offer, skills. Obviously, you may have some skills. I know that the people in the live audience definitely have great skills that they can offer that others certainly do not. But for people watching the recording, if you don't have a lot of skills, time. If you're a college student, a high school student, right out of school, you're driving Uber to make ends meet while you're trying to figure out what your next big break's going to be, you probably have some time you can dedicate to them. You may have ideas. If you're working with someone who's a big shot, well-connected, very influential, 65 years old, they might not have a good sense of millennials and Gen Zers, or you just might have a different perspective because they're working in their office, they've got all their executives around them, and you're down on the street. You may understand their clients better than they do. You may have connections that they don't. No matter how connected they seem to be, you know people they don't. And those could be resources, and you might have other resources as well. You never know what you have to bring to bear when you think of it in that broader way. So networking attitude, I talk about this in my book, The Networker's Attitude. Those of you who are familiar with BNI are familiar with giver's gain. And giver's gain is that you are not going in to take, you are going to give. You're not going to say, what can I get out of this encounter? What can I give in this encounter? And if everyone thinks that way, everyone's going to benefit. That's why you want to know when somebody says, hey, what can I give you? You want to have an answer. When someone says, hey, who can I refer you to? You want to be like, people? No, you want to know specific people that you want to connect with. As you network, you want to build your personal referral network so that when you go to give, you've got something to give from. You've got those connections, and offer introductions. Offer introductions before you have a network. So here's the thing: if you know who you want to connect with, or if you know what you're looking for, it's easier to find it. If you have a friend who's trying to find a painter, well, now you've got a reason to go network of painters. You're going to build relationships in that way. Giver's gain, going a little bit more in depth. As you approach networking, you're always thinking about what you have to offer and not what you want to take. This inspires others to want to help you. I can't remember if we're going to talk about this later, so I'm going to talk about it right now. When you're in a conversation meeting someone, one strategy that I sometimes like is making them talk about themselves. People love to talk about themselves, so it's not really a big ask to be like, I want you to talk about yourself. Left to learn devices, most people will talk about themselves quite a bit. So ask them, what do you do? And they'll tell you. And then ask them another question before they can reflect the question back and get them to really go on about what they do when probably what they're looking for, what they need. And as they talk about what they need, then say, oh, I know someone who can help you. I have a resource. I have a connection I can offer. Now you are now in the conversation where they have taken your time. So they have a social debt because they've taken your time and talked about themselves, but you haven't talked about yourself. And further social debt because you have now helped solve some of their problems before they even know what you do. And so the cool thing about this is now they are getting curious. They're feeling obligated. And, now you're 4 or 5 minutes in. They're like, so what do? You can now monologue for 5 minutes because you gave them the floor for all that time. And now anything you need to ask for, you can feel more comfortable doing because you've already made the deposits. You've already made that connection. And even if you don't get interrupted, their impression of you is that you are very interesting, very kind, and somewhat mysterious. If the announcements start and the raffle starts just after you've learned everything about them and all they know is your name, they're keeping their eye on you as you wander off because they're like, who is that mysterious person? What do they do? I must know. So, this is kind of something to think about. And the giver's gain idea is the same idea. If you give first, they're going to want to give in reciprocity. People hate feeling indebted, not in a negative way, but they just like, oh, what can I give you now? You gave something to me. How can I give to you? So personal referral network. So this is all of your contact in all fields. It grows through helping. It's like a muscle. There is and I don't think too many people hold this view anymore, but there's a myth that some people have that their network is a limited resource. And, I don't want to introduce you to that person because I might need a favor from them later. When in fact, you are more likely to be able to get the favor from that person later if you make introductions to them. Every time you make an introduction, you're not asking them for something. You're not asking them for something. What you're saying is, I value your knowledge, your experience, your business. You are valuable enough that I think someone would benefit from getting to know you, from meeting you, and I'd like to connect. It's a compliment. Now, even if you're connecting someone to sell to them, unless they're an obnoxious bore, it's still a compliment. I think you're worth this person talking to. Are you open to talking to them? So you can also grow your network by helping people. If I didn't know any realtors, but I had someone looking to buy a house who wanted a good, trustworthy realtor, I could go out to a bunch of realtors and say, hey, I've got someone looking to buy a house. We should do a one-to-one. They want to do a one-to-one with me because I'm effectively, for my friend, I'm screening for them. I'm talking to 5 different realtors. I'm giving them the one that gave me the best vibe or the 2 that gave me the best vibe. But then to those realtors, they have a reason to want to talk to me. Same thing, whatever the field is, they're looking for something. Now you've got a reason to go make those connections and reach out to them. So something I like to do in all of my workshops, and we'll see if it works with 4 people in the room. But something I like to do with all of my workshops is ask, who are you looking to meet right now? What connections are you looking to make right now? I've been successful in groups as small as 10. We'll see if it works in 4. So put in the chat, who are you looking to meet right now? What introductions would be most valuable right now? And then we'll see if anyone in the room knows them. I know a life coach. Actually, I know a bunch of life coaches. So Missy is looking for a therapist / a life coach, which, as I mentioned, actually, I actually might know. So Missy said a life and financial and business coach / guru, but not one around here exactly. That actually sounds like a description of, for Missy, that sounds like a description of Michelle Jacobic, who's one of our speakers here, and a couple of other, or Nancy Butler. There we go. You two should connect if you have not connected already. Nancy, you do so many things, it didn't jump to mind of your coaching. I think of your speaking and writing. But there we go. That could be the connection right there. Nancy, Missy, make sure you connect before this is over. Personal injury attorneys. Ed, do you know the attorney in Crescent Beach? What's his name? He's based in Niantic. I can't remember. His name, I think it has one of those Italian double Z's in it. But we'll talk about that. I'll connect you with him. I don't know him well, but I met him once. But that might be someone good for you. Although he may be connected to someone else in your office. But I'll keep that in mind for other PI attorneys. So there we go. Look at that. In a group as small as 3. Yeah. The other challenge, I could totally go down the rabbit hole. It's like, ooh, networking activity. All right. And then 15 minutes, I'm working on thinking of connections. But anyway, the point is, in a group of 3 live now, 30. There's 30 people in my live audience for anyone watching the recording. But seriously, in a group of 3, there was a connection between 2 of them. I found this last summer. I had 8 clients I was working with, and there were 3 pairs of connections within those 8. So even if your network is 3 or 4 people, you still have the potential that what someone's looking for is in that small group. This is how I've been able to become the guy who knows a guy as that resource. It's not just a matter of knowing everybody. It's a matter of saying, I can find everybody. I may not know them, but I can figure it out. I can make the connection. And I can be that central resource for it. Navigating the networking event. They'll be back someday. So I'm going to talk about live networking events because someday we'll have them again, but also because that's where I cut my teeth, so to speak, and learned how to network, and then adapting that concept into the virtual concept. So the first thing I always like to point out is they do not all know each other. So people who are not comfortable with networking events will go to a networking event and they will say, oh, I hate going to that chamber event because everyone already knows each other and they're so cliquish and I can't get in. Well, there's 2 reasons why people are going to be engrossed in conversation. You walk in and there's all these clumps of conversation and they're talking and talking and talking and talking. And, they're still talking to each other 10 minutes later. 2 reasons. 1, they are meeting for the first time. In which case, every question is interesting. What do you do? Where are you from? Do you have kids? What are your hobbies? Everything is new, exploring territory. And remember, everyone is anxious. Not everyone. 90% of people there are anxious. And so once they find someone to talk to, they will hold on to them like a drowning person to a life raft. You get in a life raft. Like a drowning person to a log. They will hold on to them because they can keep that conversation going. They don't have to go meet another stranger. So 2 people meeting for the first time will stay in conversation for 15, 20, 30 minutes so they don't have to go meet someone else. If you jump into the conversation, you are helping them to be better networkers and meet more people without having to go out and meet more strangers. So they're probably not going to mind. Also, they're talking, they're sharing their entire biography with each other. You drift on over to the conversation, hang out with them, listen in. And this works in the Sling Show networking modules as well. You go into a table and you listen to 2 people meeting each other. You are now hearing, so you no longer have to ask, what do you do, where are you from, blah, 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 because someone else already did that. You already got all that information. And worst case, they never include you in the conversation. You now have enough information to triage if there's someone you want to get to know or not. And best case, at a certain point, someone's going to say, oh, hi, new person. Hey, Missy, tell us about yourself. So you may be able to get drawn into the conversation without having to insert yourself into it. The other possibility is that they came here together and they're too timid to go out and network, so you can help them. You see this at our local chamber. You see this all the time, or used to see it when we had live events, that most of the banks will pay for their staff to go to the networking events. So you look over there, and there's 5 people, all in suits, all with Liberty Bank name tags. And over there's 5 people, all in suits, all with Dime Bank name tags. And over there's 6 people, all dressed up, all in Core Plus name tags. Maybe they'll talk to each other because bankers tend to know other bankers. But they're staying in their little cliques because they're there because the company's paying for it. It's a nice cocktail party. open bar, nice food. They know they're supposed to be doing something and doing some kind of networking, but they don't really know how very often, or they do know how, they just don't want to because they're shy and they don't want to deal with that. So if you were to drift over to that group, they're excited to meet you because they know they're there on their employer's dime, and they want to make connections. And if their boss asks them tomorrow, hey, who'd you meet at the networking event? They'd like to be able to say, oh, I met this really interesting person. She's written 3 books and she's a coach and a speaker. And they'll just talk about the one person they met, you, at length, and make it sound like they met lots of people and lots of others. But that was the most interesting one. So you are helping them. If you go and join them, you're not interrupting them. You're helping them. So they don't all know people. They don't all already know each other. You can go and engage. Again, getting back, I mentioned this before, but why are you here? What connections would be valuable to you? Who do you want to meet? What can you offer? So when the well-trained networker says to you, who's an ideal referral for you? You want to have that answer. More important than an elevator pitch. You can have no elevator pitch, but know who your ideal referral is. You're going to be better off. Because if you can just say, like, I work in this field, I'm a basket weaver, then they'll ask questions if they want to know more, or maybe they won't. But if you say, I'm really looking to meet, Easter bunnies because I'm a basket weaver. They may then ask questions like, where do you find Easter bunnies? You get the conversation going that way. But you want to let them know you want to know what connections be valuable. You also want to know in case you run into them. If there's a certain type of person you're trying to meet and you see on their name tag that that's who they are, you really want to know that. So it's really good to know what you're there trying to find. So one clever hack is the power of an introduction. So if somebody introduces you to somebody, that has some cachet to it. If somebody comes over and says, hey, Michael, I'd like you to meet John. I think he's someone who'd be good for you to meet. Now, you notice I didn't say my friend John. I just said, I think you should meet John. There's a heuristic in that. Now, a heuristic is a fancy word for saying our tiny brains cannot handle the giant universe. The universe, very complicated. Our brains, very small. So they shortcut things. And one of the heuristics, one of the shortcuts is if someone is introducing me to someone, 2 things are probably true. 1, I probably know the person who's introducing us and have some degree of trust. And 2, because someone is introducing them and vouching for them, they're probably worth knowing. Neither of these things may be true, or you may not know they're true, but your brain will assume they are true because that is the heuristic of an introduction. So this means that if we're at a networking event together and you say, oh my God, over there, that's the CEO of that big company I've been trying to connect with, but I can't just walk up to him. I mean, he's a really big deal. I don't know how to start the conversation. I don't know what to say. I could say, come with me. And I could walk over and read his name off his name tag and say, hey, Mr. CEO, do you know my friend John? No, I don't. Oh, you two should meet. I think you have a lot to discuss. What John does, I think will be of interest to you. And now the CEO is going to say, oh, tell me more. And now a conversation has begun. You've been introduced. It's been warmed up. The great thing is anyone can do this for anyone. It's awesome. There's minimal pressure on the introducer because they don't know you. So even if it is a bad introduction, they don't know you. And they're not going to hold it against you anyway because they won't remember who introduced them. But it also takes the pressure off the introducee because you're using that heuristic and bringing that connection. Because ultimately, everyone's there to meet people anyway. If you're at a networking event, your friend could have gone over and introduced themselves. It would have worked fine. But this kind of greases the skids a bit. All right, now let's talk about, this is one of my favorite parts of the presentation. Don't be that guy. There's certain people at networking events that you do not want to be. This is kind of teaching by contra example. So don't be these. So here's a couple of examples of bad networkers. The card collector. The card collector is the person who keeps score by how many business cards they can give or take. And this obviously is not good networking. Now, this is a variation on good networking. Ideally, you're talking to people for 3 to 5 minutes. You're getting to meet them, assess them, see if there's someone you want to talk to more, setting up a future one-to-one or future contact. And the more people you can have short, meaningful conversations with, the more effective you're going to be. The card collector is not doing this. The card collector is pressing his card into your hand, taking your card, and saying, great to meet you. Effectively, the card collector now has a stack of cold calls to make, and not much better than that. This is not an ideal outcome. The social climber. At a networking event, you do not want to be doing this thing. You don't want to be talking to one person and looking around the room for the better person, the more interesting conversation to have. This makes the person you're talking to think you're not paying attention to them because you're not. So don't be seen to do that. Now, this does not mean that it's not okay to, out of the corner of your eye, keep an eye out for people you might want to be seeing, because time is a limited resource in a networking event. That's a recognized fact and accepted, and not all networking contacts are equal. The person you're talking to may be interesting, but may not be the person you're here to meet, is going to help your business, is going to make valuable connections. And one of the things I do like about this Slingshot platform is that it lets you kind of do this in a polite way. Because the issue is, I don't want to be talking to you while I see you looking around. I don't care if you are looking around. I kind of assume you are, because you want to make more connections. And I'm so interesting, you'll be sucked into the conversation for the whole hour if you don't find someone else to talk to. So I get that. I do. I'm very interesting. I understand that. But with Slingshot, what's cool about it is that you can actually, there's that button in the lower right that lets you see all the other tables. So while you're in a conversation and you're engaging, you can glance at the other table to see who else is there, especially if you've been in a conversation kind of going a bit long. You're going to set up a one-to-one with them later, but you really want to meet more people. You've only got 15 minutes. So it does let you do that without being the rude social climber. Speaking of taking lots of time, don't be the presenter. The presenter is the person who wants to give you his life story and his entire business pitch and everything. And, sometimes the presenter is overly social and is going to tell you lengthy stories. Sometimes the presenter is trying to present his business pitch to you. Whatever it is, don't be that. You're there to make a brief connection, see if you're a fit to follow up with a follow-up one-to-one, and then move on to make another brief connection. You're not going to make a sale here. You're not going to have an in-depth conversation. You want to make sure that you can get in and out and meet a lot of people. So don't monopolize your time. And don't be the wino. Do not drink more than 2 drinks at the open bar. I don't care how high you think your tolerance is. Do not drink more than 2 drinks. There is someone I know who thought his tolerance was higher than it was and would start to do that. How when someone's a little bit drunk, they start to repeat themselves? And it's not really obvious, but the third time they've gone in a circle, you're like, I think the record's skipping. He'd do that all the time at networking events. So you want to be careful. Missy, you'll be safe because I've rarely seen good wine at a networking event. Mostly it's, $9 bottles of Barefoot. So I think you're probably safe from the good wine. But yeah, so keep it to 2 drinks, 2 drink maximum over the course of the event, because people can, people can tell that. And I have a note on this slide, which all says, don't hit on people. Duh. But probably does not bear mentioning, but I'm going to mention it anyway. Networking events aren't places to pick up dates. Probably happens more likely if you are drinking. So, all right, small talk. Small talk. So small talk is big. That's the name of one of the chapters in my book. So small talk builds rapport. It helps you get background information. It helps to establish information about what they need as you're chatting about whatever it is, their kids moving into town, what they do, their hobbies, their family. You learn places you can help them. If they're big shot, well-connected executive and you're just some person, you probably can't help them with big shot business things, but maybe you can help them with finding a tutor for their kids, or with a strategy for homeschooling, or with something like that on that human level. Those common human factors are what really bring us all together. So some people are like, I don't have time for small talk. I'm going straight to business. Well, that's fine if you're going to a business meeting with an established, with an established agenda. But if you're just meeting people, you want to keep it light, keep it fluffy, because you never know. You might find really important stuff in that small talk. And most importantly, they're just people. Everyone has needs. Maybe you can fill them. Everyone has problems. Maybe you can solve them. Everyone has friends, family, loves, hates, passions, hobbies, worries, health, etc. We are all human, or possibly lizard people in human suits. But either way, we all have particular needs that people may be able to address. And also, talking to those people that might intimidate you, they may not know they're a big deal. I talk in my book about the phenomenon of the PhD, the scientist at a science fiction convention. So if you're a PhD scientist, and at work you're surrounded by PhD scientists and grad students, so nobody's impressed that you're a PhD scientist. They're all PhD scientists. You go to a science fiction convention as a legit PhD scientist, you don't pay for your own drinks. You probably don't pay for your own food. Anyone who meets you, oh my God, you're a scientist? Oh, you work at Pfizer? Oh, you're a scientist at NASA? Oh my God, let me buy you a drink. Let me hear your story. So to the attendee at that convention, they're a really big deal, but they don't know they're a big deal. They just think they're another scientist. Even scientists who have their names on things are like, well, yeah, that happens. I guess I'm pretty good at it. Same thing with business owners. A lot of people, when they meet a business owner, a lot of us don't realize that. When you meet a business owner, they say, you own your own business? Wow, what's that like? Because they don't. And they couldn't imagine owning a business. And they're impressed by it. And you're like, why are you talking to me like that? Because they're super impressed by you. You could be the big deal to someone else, in the same way that you think someone else is a big deal, and they have no idea why you're so excited. I also want to talk about the idea of relationship selling. And this is a topic I like to talk about because when I worked for a few different companies doing sales, the sales managers did not understand this networking thing I was doing. Why was I wasting my time with things that didn't generate sales? Of course, they did generate sales. It just wasn't trackable. Very powerful, as I imagine many of you know. But you can't track it. You can't say, or you can't always be able to pin it down to, remember that networking event that I went to 17 months ago? Well, that led to this connection, led to this meeting, led to this event, that led to this party, that led to this meeting, led to this contact, led to this conversation, that led me back to someone I already knew but didn't realize had a need, that led to a sale. Your sales manager is going to be like, yeah, sure, right. You're just looking for free drinks. So building relationships is very powerful. It can be hard to track. But you may have heard of the always be closing from the Alec Baldwin scene from Glengarry Glen Ross. Terrible marketing advice. Always be networking is good advice. Always be closing just makes you a jerk. So this idea of selling with a relationship, selling by people getting to know you and trust you, is a very effective strategy that builds over time, but doesn't always work immediately. And from the Department of Learn from My Mistakes Before You Make Your Own, monetization makes the world go around. Make sure your business has a way to make money. When I first started networking, I had this idea of, I'm going to build a big network. And as I build a network, I'm sure I'll figure out some kind of need I can fill or solve, and money somehow. If any of you saw South Park, you may remember the underwear gnomes. Step 1, steal underwear. Step 2, Step 3, profit. I was step 1, network. Step 2, step 3, profit. Went broke that way. Had to go get a real job. So networking is great, but you could be the biggest, most helpful networker in the world and still be broke. Make sure you have a method that will turn this network somehow into money. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with making money. You need to make money. That's how you live. That's how you pay your bills. That's how you'll keep doing what you're doing. And most people in the business community, I think, get that. They're not against people making money. But there are certainly communities out there where the idea of people making money from something is considered somehow dirty or crass. Money's good. You need it. Otherwise, you'll be the best connected homeless person in the nicest cardboard box in town. All right. So we went through the who are you looking for exercise. We're going to do it again if we have time at the end because this is longer than I thought it'd be. Networking 2020, 2021 style in the future. So there's a new genre of networking events I'm finding. These virtual networking events are basically virtual speed networking. They're on Zoom, and the concept they follow is you go into a Zoom room, and there's a main, usually someone introduces something, gives a little talk, whatever. Our keynote speaker, Matt Ward, runs one. Also, one of our sponsors, Digital Accelerant, Gabe from Digital Accelerant runs one. There's a whole bunch of them. Once you go to one, a lot of people who run the other ones go to the others, so you can go from one to the next to the next. A lot of them are free. If they're not free, they're very inexpensive. From the big room, they then break you out into breakout rooms randomly, and some are 3 minutes, some are 5 minutes, some are 7 minutes, but there's 3 people and there's a question. There's all kinds of different ways they can do it, but basically it lets you connect with a whole bunch of people, just like going to a chamber event. And it's generally people around the country or around the world. Here's 2 of them, and there's links there that you can find, and I can get to those links later as well. I'll probably share them in the Conference 21 discussion group because I think everyone will be interested in it. Also, some of the traditional groups are moving online. AmSpirit, BNI, they're so for those of you who are familiar with one and not the other, the basic structure is similar. There's some subtle nuances, but both AmSpirit and BNI have the concept of one person per seat, and in the meeting, go around the room and you talk to, and each person gives a talk about what they do for 30 seconds or a minute or whatever. And those platforms convert really well to the digital platform because it's not about a lot of one-on-one. It's about a lot of people talking. And Dr. Ed, I think you'll notice that the picture I happen to have is somewhat dated, but Ed Hutter there, who's watching us, is in my BNI group. So, but also, Toastmasters, Rotary, Lions, I'm assuming Lions, I'm not in it, but a lot of those different groups have also moved online. And, with Toastmasters is kind of cool because you can now visit a Toastmasters group anywhere, visit a Rotary Club anywhere. And you can even visit, because I'm, as a BNI member, I can visit BNI groups anywhere. When this first when things started going kind of wacky, I realized, wait, if my BNI group's on Zoom, everyone else's BNI group's on Zoom, I could visit them anywhere. I went to the Facebook BNI members group, and I said, I'd like to visit BNI groups all over the world. Who would like to have me visit them? And a whole bunch of people contacted me and said, yeah, come on down, contact me. So this is a screenshot from BNI, Millennium BNI, which is in Malaysia. Yeah, I think I knew what the city was, but I'm blanking on what it is. But in Malaysia, and at that particular meeting, there were visitors from 5 different countries. It was really cool, and I got to see. It was basically they would love to have you. I think it's kind of a point of pride that people from around the world come to visit their meetings now, and they meet at 6 p.m. our time, which is great. So, definitely, if you have not visited them, they really show. Is anyone else seeing my screen as blank? Because Ed is seeing my screen as blank. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So occasionally, sometimes it blanks out slightly, or some people have been saying it blanks out. So you may need to refresh the screen if you lose audio or video. Where was I? Oh yes. So I was in Malaysia. Yeah. So it was really interesting. I actually got to visit a group in Melbourne, Australia, when they were entering their super lockdown. after which they didn't have COVID anymore. And it was really interesting perspective to be able to talk to the people and see like what their on the ground perspectives were of going through that. So groups like BNI, if you're a BNI member, or Toastmasters, Rotary, if you're in any kind of global organization, visit groups all over the world because it's amazing. It's like traveling the world without leaving your house. It is a really cool thing, a great thing to take advantage of. So, and with that, I will open the floor to questions. We've got about 10 minutes left. Who has questions? Or if there's anyone you're looking to meet, feel free to put that in the chat as well. You are welcome for the great tips, Nancy. Any questions? Let me look back and see if there's any questions I missed up above. Oh, these are good notes. That's good. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So Nancy, I'm not sure if this was a question or a statement, but you talked about, how to start the conversation, get a referral without seeming pushy. So when you're asking for referrals, of course, that's what you're here for. You're here to network. You're here to make connections. So if you know what you're looking for and they don't ask you, who can I refer you to? How can I help you? Any of those kinds of things, then you can ask them, do you happen to know anyone who blank? And then you're not so much asking them to do something for you. You're asking them, you're giving them the opportunity to be, a networking hero. Who do you know do you know anyone who runs conferences looking for speakers? Because I'm looking for those kinds of connections. And they may not, but most people are open to making the connection at least. Let's see, links to our names, local, USA, or global networking sites. So there's a few that come to mind. So there's the one that Matt Ward runs, which is I think it's a monthly group called the Big Connect. There is the Accelerator. Go back a couple slides here. There's the Digital Accelerant Networking. If you go to digitalaccelerant.com, there's a link out of there. And there's also one in New Jersey I can't remember the name of, but I'll share it in the Conference 21 community as well. And then, of course, you've got, BNI and AM Spirit and which are so both of those are more focused on local networking. Whereas if you're looking for speaking engagements and you're either willing to travel or go virtual, then you want more broad-based kind of things. But the great thing about these virtual events like the Digital Accelerant, Big Connect, those, once you get into the groove of one of them, you tend to get introductions out and invitations to the other ones. So Missy said, other than BNI, AM Spirit, I have friends in my industry that basically go on Facebook groups, local and question topic groups related to their industry and similar forums, and they become a helpful authority and get referrals that way. That is an excellent point. I love that. And along those lines, there's LinkedIn has some kind of functionality with questions. I'm not quite sure how it works or how well it works. There's a site called Quora, Quara, I believe, where people can ask questions. You can answer them. Alignable also has a Q&A function, so people can ask questions and you can answer those and leverage that to build connections. And yeah, and likewise, Facebook groups. There's all kinds of places like that where you can make a connection. And then once you're engaging in those groups, whatever social media platform it is, usually there's some way to reach out to people individually. So you see someone who has a good answer or has a good question, and you message them and say, hey, I really liked your answer, your question, your hair, whatever it is that's a hook to a conversation, and say, can we do a one-to-one? I'd love to set up a call, a Zoom call, whatever. Because ultimately, all this networking, the purpose of it is to get to a one-to-one. is to get to a conversation one-on-one for half an hour to see if it's worth having more conversation. So, get on there one-to-one. And so, get onto those conversations. And you can talk to people who are commenting. You can talk to people who are posting. You can talk to people who ask you things. Basically, anyone there is someone you can reach out to and try to engage with to get that conversation started. And sometimes one of the best ways to do that is post a question on the platform. Like I made a post that Keith Bashir's used as an example yesterday, where I said, in 7 words or less, what problem do you solve? And that there's 40 comments under there. And through that can create engagement where somebody answers. And if in that answer I say, that's someone I want to talk to, I could then message them and say, I really liked your answer to my question. Can we have a one-to-one? So it gives you the chance to build that a little more. And also, as a reminder, I am encouraging everyone to go to feedback.conference21.com, and I'm going to put in the announcement box here and share what you thought of this talk. Type and do that for each of the talks, please. If you are interested in being added to the particular speaker's email list, there's an option to do that. All of you are on the Conference 21 email list, but I keep that separate from my own email list. So if you want to learn about like networking and other events and whatnot that I do, then you can certainly share your information on the feedback form, which I think is there. Looks like it's there. So yeah, partner local TEDx is good as well. I actually didn't even realize that was an option. So that's a great idea, Missy, to be able to partner with them. So hopefully you've gotten a bit out of this. I see some positive comments, so I feel like that's probably a good sign. We've got about 2 minutes left. Are there any other questions, comments, or thoughts that anyone would like to share before our time runs out? Anything else? It says her boyfriend from high school did TEDx for 4 to 6 years, and her best friend from high school did TEDx for 4 to 6 years, and then they helped. He got hired to help with a real TED. Big TED. Yes, that's pretty cool. Yeah, and that goes back to what I was saying about how if you have time, that can be your greatest asset that you can share. Is that volunteering for things or helping out, or if you have a passionate project you care about, volunteering with Rotary, volunteering with Lions, volunteering with beautification committee, your garden club, or whatever it is a great way to make connections while also making the world a better place. So, last call for questions. Thank you, Ed. Bueller. All right. Well, I guess we're good. Yeah, about 60 seconds left. Oh, 6 seconds means I hit the button to start the 6-second timer. Bam. There we go. Applause. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for coming. And I'm glad you found it valuable. And tell all your friends, because this will be recorded and up on actually, this one I'll probably just put out on public YouTube because it's mine. And it's handy to have a good recording of me giving my talk. So thank you, everybody.